I'm not sure if this has really that I want it to. So I guess we'll figure that out here in a little bit. Greetings and salutations, by the way. Uh, I'm currently at my new desk setup. I've been working on some stuff. Orientation is locked. Okay. Let's try. Come on. Quit being dumb. Okay. But anyway, um, working on some RPG projects currently. Um, I'll explain that here in a little bit, but I'm at my new setup right now for my desk. Probably the first time in a while I've gone live. Doing it mostly out of necessity. I have a lot of crap that's on my phone that's slowing down the memory banks on it. And for whatever reason, I can't get OBS to work right on my computer, so I'll have to figure that one out. Currently, kind of making a hodgepodge of different stuff. Um, Anybody wishing for some suggested reading right now? Of course, I'm rereading this, the Iliad. I haven't read it since high school. This is, of course, the Samuel Butler translation. Pardon me. And as you can see, I'm almost to the end of it. I ain't got a whole lot left. I almost got it read. I'm going to be rereading the Odyssey pretty soon too. Classic works in fiction, especially in Western fiction. They've kind of colored how a lot of our storytelling is done, and there's a reason why works like that end up in like appendix ends in a lot of games, because they really kind of howdy, but they kind of um, essentially encapsulate what we think about in terms of storytelling. So, of course, I'm rereading that. What I'm also doing right now is I'm digitizing this right now. So this will take me a bit. I've had an idea whenever a few, especially new subscribers, decided to whenever they decided they were kind of interested in some of my maps and some of my work. I decided, hey, maybe I'll really give a serious consideration into digitizing some of my work so that I could put it online. What I'm going to do with it, what avenues I'm going to go through, I'm not sure yet. Um, I probably, I'm not. I might use Drive Through RPG. I'll probably talk to Matt from Dirty Histories and Hobbies about that, like because I know he's got his Castle Kusi up on Drive Through RPG, and I'm his is pay what you want, so you can have it for free as a PDF. So if you want to go check that out, definitely go check that out. It's available on Drive Through RPG. I don't have the link right off the bat, but um, some people ask what do you do mostly with random rolls. Here's how I use random rolls whenever I come up with adventure ideas for my games. Um, Usually start out with this little basic outline, right? Like, probably can't see it too awful well, but I start with like a very simple basic thing. Um, Basic and expert sets usually have like scenarios. One of them being fighting evil, which in this case I decided to go with. Um, and I just started rolling dice to see what came up. Um, I think my first random roll was a halfling. So I was like, okay, we got a halfling, and then we're going to, okay, how do we play with that idea? I don't really want the halfling to be evil because you can make it work, but it can sometimes be goofy. And, I just haven't figured out a way to make that work. So instead, I made the halfling more of the guy who gives the job to the halfling's knowledge is to clear out sturges that are layered up in an old gnome mine. And then after that, um, I haven't quite figured out any kind of rumors for that yet to put in the town for players to come into. But be that as it may, something that I also picked up. I picked it up over the weekend. Let me pull it out here. So, some people on Facebook have seen this. Of course, a lot of people from my channel have seen the community post, but I've got the Frank Mincer basic set, and this is the legit set. So, some people curious. This is not a reprint. You could probably won't show up very well on the camera, but the back cover where the character sheet is printed is kind of yellowing, and towards the edges actually a little bit browning because of some of the patina from the staples coming off. And because of that, like it just shows its age, but it's not in bad condition. It's actually in very good condition. The earlier pages have a little bit of waving going on the outer margin. Probably won't be able to see that very much. But all the pages are there. This is the first printing of May 1983. So this is a legit Frank Mincer set from 1983. Whether or not this is the set that ended up going into the box into the Beck Me box set as part of that series, I don't know. Or if this predates those releases, I'm not sure. But no, it did not come with a box, unfortunately. I wish it did. In fact, how cool it would have been not only to have the box, but to have the original dice and crayon that came with that set. That'd be awesome, but unfortunately, it's not what it didn't come with it. The Dungeon Master's Guide right here is actually in a lot of ways in better shape than the Player's Handbook, but I guess that makes sense because almost everybody that gets into this hobby starts out as a player. So therefore it's just the nature of the hobby. You're going to have more players than you are going to have game masters or dungeon masters or referees, whatever term you wish to use. So the Dungeon Master's book is probably not going to see that much use unless somebody is a forever DM. But yeah, it's a cool part of history. I found it for $20. So I mean, and in the condition it's in, I found it at steal. So of course this is the one with the solo adventure in the beginning to teach you how to play. So probably be pretty cool to play through it on the stream. But other projects, mostly I'm using Labyrinth Lord. I've returned to that rule set simply because I have a soft spot for it. It wasn't my first rule set. Basic Fantasy was. In all honesty, if you've played them all. I still have there at the bottom of my desk. I still have my Basic Fantasy Omnibus. And give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I still have the. I can't remember if I moved the book yet. I think I have moved the book. So I think it is over on my desk. Give me just 1 second. Oh. Alrighty, I'm going to dig out a little bit more because I know a lot of people that would enjoy this. All right. Uh-oh. Dropping books is never good. All right. So, kind of pull them out one at a time. So, of course, I still have my original third edition of the rule sets. A little browning on the edge. A little dog-eared. A little worn out. A little beat up. But you know what? That's a-okay. This is... I love this rule set. I love Basic Fantasy. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. This was how I learned how to play BX style gaming. Even though it might not necessarily be like it's not exactly the same as this, but that doesn't make it bad. Ascending armor class. You know, I've never seen a reason why some people didn't really take to descending armor class so well. It's really not that much harder math. In fact, it's not really that hard at all. But be that as it may, ascending armor class is good for new people, and it is quicker math in a lot of ways. Race is not class, so you can have a dwarf cleric, which I'm a big fan of. I think everybody likes a dwarf cleric. I don't think everybody necessarily has a problem with dwarf clerics. It just feels right, you know what I mean? Dwarf mage, no. It just it just doesn't fit right. But a dwarf cleric, you know, that's a different story. Like it just feels like it should be a thing. All right. With that, if you are going to get Basic Fantasy, here is probably the least used book in my collection, and that is the Equipment Emporium. The Equipment Emporium is not bad. It's good for really fast setups. Other than that, it provides a few different kinds of armors and weapons and stuff, but it's definitely the book I use the least whenever I ran Basic Fantasy all the time. Now, if you are going to run Basic Fantasy, here's a book I do recommend, and that is the Field Guide, because you get extra monsters. And as you can probably tell from my channel mascot, Morty the Lich, Lich is my favorite monster. I feel like every RPG should at least have a Lich. You know, of course, you get one in this book. So, there you go. If you're going to get Basic Fantasy, get the Field Guide. Definitely get the Field Guide. What else do we have? Now, if you're looking for adventures to start people out with, the Adventure Anthology is really good. It's especially good for one-shots. There is one in here, Beneath Brian Masson, that is a really good beginner-friendly one. There's several different ones in here that are pretty good early to mid-level adventures. Insect Valhalla is a pretty good one. I liked that one pretty good. And the Night of the Necromancer is another good one. But I'm a sucker for Necromancer centered adventures. Of course, I have the volume 2. Volume 2 I haven't used the most. Hopefully they print the Field Guide Omnibus. Yeah, I feel like they should. Like, this is all, like, here's probably the one non-third edition book I have in my collection. And that is the first, I think this is the first edition of Morgansport. Yep, this is first edition, release number 21. There are, and I covered the differences on the channel before between this and what you typically get afterwards. I feel like the newer one, the cover looks more like Eye of the World's cover. It just reminds me of Eye of the World for whatever reason. Maybe it's the color scheme, but it reminds me of it a lot. A big difference between this, there's an NPC in here who is described in pretty decent detail in terms of skin color and eye color. I don't think it's a big deal. Some, woke idiot made it a big deal in their blog, and, it kind of pricked Gunnerman's mind a bit. Yeah, Morgansport's really good. In fact, Halden Rathwin in this, and I'm not sure, but I recall a story on the forums back when I was more active in the Basic Fantasy forums of Halden Rathwin, the Baronet of Morgansport, actually being Chris Gonnerman's fighter character from his adventures in B2, the Keep on the Borderlands. And so that's kind of why this reminds people of Keep on the Borderlands a lot, because it's basically Keep on the Borderlands. It's just that they named the NPCs in it. But, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The map is different. So it's not a total one point for point recreation of B2, but there it is. So there's that. Like I said, again, I've showed it already, but this is my favorite iteration of Basic. And this is not a reprint. Again, for anybody just joining me, this is not a reprint. This is the original. I found it for $20. So at a local comic and card shop in London, Kentucky. So I found it a steal. If I can find the expert set, awesome, man. That'd be cool. But this is, in all honesty, I'm going to sell you on playing this particular version of the game. It's because levels 1 through 3 are the most fun the game is. Like, that's when adventures are really harrowing. And, of course, Kill Bargle. So, aside from Basic Fantasy, so an excellent game. Oh, what else have I got down here? Of course, probably, if I had to choose a retro clone to keep that was not Dungeons and Dragons brand, it would be a toss-up, okay, between these two games. So, of course, Labyrinth Lord, and then White Box. This would be very hard to choose. I would probably go with this one simply because of the option to go up past level 10. Be that as it may, from personal experience, I haven't had very many games go past level 10. In fact, the only times I usually ever run level 10 and upwards is in one-shots, just because, I've had players that was like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be like. Well, I could do a one-shot. So, there you go. I hate that Labyrinth Lord doesn't have the support that it used to have. It used to seem like everything was made for Labyrinth Lord. It doesn't have that support now. Same with White Box. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of... You can find stuff online that people have made for White Box. Charlie Mason's version of White Box. But it's so few and far between. It's kind of like... There is a forum for it. And there is a Facebook group for it. Kind of like Basic Fantasy. But by far, nothing's going to beat Basic Fantasy's forums. Basic Fantasy has the most active and supportive forum. So, therefore there's a lot of support for that game. White Box typically doesn't. Although it certainly does have more than Labyrinth Lord. Both really good choices. Exactly. Both really good. And you can't go wrong with either one of them. Okay, so let's take these two basic fantasy retro clones. Okay, these two basic retro clones. Okay, so this versus this. What makes this do? Like I said before, if you're somebody who you struggle with descending armor class for whatever reason, and again, I'm not going to judge you on that. Understand that it's not intuitive to some people. Well, then basic fantasy is going to be the choice for you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this game. As you can see, this is my first copy. It is brown on the edges. It is dog-eared to crap. I have played hours and hours and hours, probably close to a full year. If I was to add up all the hours, probably an equivalent of a year playing Basic Fantasy. Really good. These games are both similar, very similar to each other. The ascending armor class thing, and then also races, not class. That being said, what I think kept Labyrinth Lord rolling for as long as it was the fact that they came out with an advanced edition companion where it did separate races class. So and you had more classes. You had like assassins and druids and stuff like that added. Whereas with basic fantasy, that kind of stuff is not considered part of any kind of official release. You can find the Glane companion in the showcase section of Basic Fantasy's website, but it's not part of the main download section. And it's mostly because, and I understand it, it was Chris Gonnerman's personal house rules and homebrew. And he didn't want, I guess he didn't possess the hubris, for lack of a better word, to say this is official material. That being said, I kind of feel like it should be an official release at the very, very bare minimum. Like, go ahead and add that part. Like, I haven't played 4th edition, and I don't own a 4th edition of Basic Fantasy because I just felt like I don't really feel the need. You know what I mean? That's just me. Like, it seemed like the main difference between 4th and 3rd was more monsters. Basically, the monsters from the first field guide put into the 4th edition core book. And I think they changed coin weight, which I found a little bit odd. Like, I think it's 20 coins to make a full pound. And I was like, it's kind of an odd number. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't understand it. But, that's probably why I'm going back and forth on when I get some of my stuff digitized, whether to release it. Again, like, so whether or not, whenever I digitize all this stuff that I have right here, whether to, I think I'm going to put it on drive-through so that it's system agnostic. My personal stuff will probably be for whatever rule set I feel like running with it. But for the most part, probably keeping it mostly system agnostic so that it doesn't clash with a lot of OS, but it is going to be OSR centric. Because I feel like we have a glut of rules, but we don't have nearly enough like maps and modules and stuff like that. I feel like we have the inverse problem of 5e, where 5e has all this glut of supplements and adventure books, but you still have to have the core game to run, which makes sense. That's the way it runs. But like, it seems like everybody's crappy adventure was released for 5e. The OSR has the inverse problem. We have a lot of rules, but we don't have a lot of supplements. We don't have a lot of adventures. We don't have a lot of maps. We have a lot of toolkits. We do have that going on. It has improved. I will say that. I think after the OGL debacle, things started to improve. It still kind of had the problem where everybody was just ripping on their basic house rules, their BX house rules, and releasing it with a shiny glossy cover for $70 on Kickstarter. And look, man, I don't waste my money on stupid crap I don't think I need, or stuff I'm not going to use. So this didn't make sense to me. Uh, but that's part of my project as far as that's concerned. Uh, I think this should be in everybody's, especially if you're OSR. This should be in your library. It really should. And I'm of course talking about the Blessed Codex Gygaxius itself. The first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. You should have it. Yeah, I mean it contains a lot of um, old school game master wisdom. You know, whatever your beliefs about Gary Gygax as a person or in his politics, I personally agreed with a lot of the stuff he said in a lot of ways. He was very libertarian in a lot of ways. That being said, he was also coke fueled a lot of times, so it's not like every decision he made was good. Um, but be that as it may, he is bar none probably one of the most influential people, if not the most influential people to our hobby. I would almost say Arneson rivals him, but Arneson was very well known for not writing his stuff down. And when he did, it was usually through the editing of Tim Kask. And um, that was Arneson's thing. Like, he couldn't be, like Tim Kask talked about it before, he couldn't be bothered to clean up his notes. And that is probably what holds Arneson back in a lot of ways. Um, and that's a shame because I feel like he had just as much to contribute to the hobby in some instances, if not more so. Because I mean, honestly, without Blackmore, we wouldn't be talking about this. Well, maybe I think that this would have came about if there wasn't a Gygax and there wasn't an Arneson, we probably would have this hobby still. It just would look a lot different. Like, and I'm not sure how the history would play out. Because human imagination is a thing, and people have been playing pretend for since humanity's been alive, and role playing has been a thing. So, but you should definitely have this book in your collection at the very least, and especially if you're somebody that likes random rolling. Because if you're somebody that really loves random generation, I mean, this book's got it in spades. There's entire appendices dedicated to it. I'm also of an opinion that you should also have this, the Rule Cyclopedia. I think this is probably, a lot of people call this their desert island book, and I am one of them. This is my desert island book. If I could only take one book with me, it would be, of course, um, this particular iteration, because this is basically Beckme minus Immortals. And honestly, there weren't a lot of people that played the Immortal set to begin with. But uh, Aaron Alston definitely compiled this work and actually cleared up a lot of errata that came with some of the Mincer set stuff. Like, I can't remember if Mincer's set ever fixed the issue with Detect Invisible from Moldvay's set. A lot of people forget, but in Basic and Expert, Moldvay and Cook, there's the Detect Invisible spell, and it has no description at all. It's left out of the rule set, so so people have had a house rule, and it's been a joke for years. Like, I guess you didn't learn Detect Invisible. So let's go to. I can't remember if the Mincer set ever did address that. Can't remember if the. Need to find. We got some spells here. That is Spellbooks, Humans. Magic user. Okay, second level, detect invisible. Oh yeah, the Mincer set did clear that up. So when this spell is cast, the magic user can see all invisible creatures and objects within range. It's 10 feet per level of the magic user, and that's for 6 turns. The range is 10 feet for each level of magic user. For example, a conjurer can use this spell to see invisible things within 30 feet. So, yeah, the Mincer set does clear up that errata. So, it was just funny that because Moldbag Cook does not have it at all um, in the rule set. It's like it's really all that could be said. They just flat out forgot about it. Now, when it comes to somebody wanting to play more modern iteration, I think these are as close to modern Gygax as you can get. Of course, I'm talking about Castles and Crusades. Essentially, all you need is the player's handbook and the Monster and Treasure. But I also do recommend getting the Castle Keeper's Guide with it. I got these, of course, these are the homage set. So, those covers, the I got them in a bundle. I think it cost me like, shit, I've had them for about a year. I can't remember how much it cost me. Yeah, point being, it's really not that much money when you think about it. Plus, they've held up a lot better than my 5e books, which are now non-existent because they fell apart. So, like, I'm still salty about that, and I will be salty about that till the end of time. It is unreasonable for you to charge $50 a book and them to just fall apart like they're a cheap paperback that somebody forgot to glue together. There's no excuse for it. So, yeah, that was the thing that got me before all the politics and stuff and the OGL thing. That was what got my foot out of the door with WotC because they can't be bothered to put together a quality product in any way, shape, and form. Um, which is a shame because when you really look at 5e, 5e is not a bad game. It's really not. It's just that the culture surrounding it sucks. And the gaming philosophy around most of its players sucks. So, take that for what you will. But I'm on vacation, by the way. I had a couple days that would not roll over because they were paid personal days, not vacation days. I had 2 paid personal days I had to take before the end of the year where I'd lose them. And of course, I'm not going to lose my time. So I was like, my older girl had a Christmas play today. So of course, I didn't miss that. So I was like, all right, I'll take off today and I'm taking off tomorrow too. So I'll tell you what. Uh, I've mostly talked about most of my products already, or projects already. So how about a cool thing? I have, of course, the Mincer Basic book. How about we play through that solo adventure at the beginning? Let's see what happens. Let's see how Rex's playthrough goes. I've got my dice and dice tray right here. I promise I will not be fudging. So, alrighty. Start right here. So, what role am I playing? So, Imagine it is another place, another time. The world is much like ours was long ago. By the way, I've never actually played this. Not the solo part. Uh, the world is much like ours was long ago, with knights and castles and no science or technology, no electricity, no modern comforts of any kind. Imagine dragons are real, werewolves are real, monsters of all kinds live in caves and ancient ruins, and magic really works. Imagine you are a strong hero, but a famous but poor fighter. Day by day, you explore the unknown, looking for monsters and treasure. The more you find, the more powerful and famous you become. In the game, we need some way of describing your character. The fighter you will pretend to be. We could say the fighter is strong, fair, nimble, not too smart. But we need to describe the character a little better than that. So they go through the whole thing for abilities and stuff like that. Ability scores. So 17 strength, 11 dexterity, 9 intelligence. So that's what we need to remember. So your hometown is just a small place with dirt roads. You set off one morning and hike to the nearby hills. There are several caves in the hills, caves where treasures can be found guarded by monsters. You have heard that a man named Bargle may also be found in these caves. Bargle is a sort of bandit who has been stealing money, killing people, and terrorizing your town. Excuse me. If you can catch him, you can become a hero. Bargle's name must have gave me indigestion. As you approach the entrance, you look around. It's a nice day, and everything seems peaceful. You know that things aren't usually peaceful in caves where monsters live, and it's usually dark too. So you get out your lantern and a tinder box. Matches haven't been invented yet, so the box has flint and steel, and carefully light the wick. The flame sputters a bit, but the oil soon burns with a soft glow. With your sword ready, you step into the cave. It's dark and musty inside. A passage leads inward from the entrance, going deeper into the hill. It looks like the only way to go. So you head in that direction, watching carefully for bats and other nasty creatures. Suddenly you see a goblin. He is smaller than you are, and looks like an ugly little man with gray skin. He sees you, gives a scream, waves his sword, and attacks. You dodge his blow and raise your sword to swing. If the goblin hadn't attacked right away, you might have tried talking to him, but now you have no choice. You must fight for your life. Okay. So we'll go with that. Alrighty. So if we roll an 11 or less, we miss the goblin. So let's find out. 4. So I do miss. If you miss, the goblin tries again but misses. It's winning again. Roll again to see if you hit. Well, let's find out. By the way, my character's name is Renault. He's based off a character from a short story I wrote in high school. 15. Sweet. If you hit the goblin, he screams and runs away down the corridor and into the darkness. He can see in the dark. You have wounded him. So, we still have 8 hit points. Back to the adventure. You stop for a moment to be sure that you are all right and then continue down the corridor. There are no side passages, no other way to go. Ahead, the corridor leads into a wider area, which we will call a chamber. You carefully approach the chamber, shining your lantern around to see if anything is there. A hiss comes from the corner of the room to your left. You see a huge rattlesnake, almost 10 feet long. Near it, on the floor, are hundreds of gold and silver coins. Mmm. Mmm. So obviously talking to a snake will do no good at all, and you can't just sneak past it. Again, you must fight. For this battle, you will have to keep track of hit points. The snake has 3 HP. On your sheet of paper near the bottom, I should actually. Okay. Let us. I got this scrap sheet right here. We have 8 HP. Now, also, a rattlesnake has poison. So that's save or die poison in this iteration of the game for some of you younger players or new to the OSR scene. Okay, snake 3. So we are, yeah, we gotta. Oh no! I'm going to keep track of the snake's HP. This time you will need to roll an 11 or higher to hit the snake. Slower and easier to hit than the goblin was, but the snake has a better chance of hitting you than the goblin did because it's bigger and tougher. Let's see if I hit the snake. I did hit the snake. In fact, that's a 19. So we are going to write a 2 next to it. You have damaged the snake. If you miss, don't do anything. The snake then bites at you and hits the top of the sheet. Cross off the 8 and write a 7 next to it. So let's find out. Alrighty, let's see how Renault's adventure keeps going. While playing a D&D game by yourself, you should use this method to keep track of your hit points and the hit points of the monster you make. See, I wish every game had a sort of teaching mechanism like Mincer Basic does. I feel like you would sell a lot more games by coming out with a basic version of your game and having a small little solo thing to play. This is a poisonous snake. It's actually not poisonous, it's venomous, but we're splitting hairs there. If it bites you and you die, it's venomous. If you bite it, it's poisonous. But we're splitting hairs again, which can be very dangerous. In the game, there is a way of finding out whether the poison hurts you or not. Roll the 20-sided die. If you roll a 12 or higher, that means you dodged before the snake can inject its poison, but you still take damage from the bite. If you roll an 11 or less, your fighter takes 2 more points of damage from the poison. So let's find out. Yeah, I took some poison damage. So that is 2 points. So we have 5 HP left. Ooh, things are really looking bad for Renault. You might. Okay, so I need to swing again. Oh, 18. Okay, so I did hit. And I am got the snake down to 1. Okay, so the snake bites me again. So I lose another point. So I'm down to 4 HP. Do I save? I do save. Okay, so I didn't take no poison damage this time. Rolled a 17. I'm going to swing again. 20. I have killed it. Sweet. The giant rattlesnake has been vanquished by Renault. I understand this is boring, but I mean, you're choosing watch, so I hope everybody's having a good night, by the way. I understand it's late and it's a Wednesday night. Not everybody's got vacation time right now like I do. Okay, so the snake is dead. You are hurt, but there's nothing you can do about it right now. The damage your fighter is taking can be healed by a few days' rest. The dead snake is not dangerous, so you get to work. You pick up as many coins and put them in cloth sacks as you brought with you. As you are doing this, you notice that besides the gold, there are three types of silvery coins. Most are silver, but others are more valuable metals called electrum and platinum. Thursday, yeah, you understand that. Yeah, it's Thursday. I said Wednesday. I lost track of it. And you think I'd remember that because I ran my Jackson County route yesterday, and that's on Wednesdays. And Thursdays is my Rockcastle day. And the boy who's relief driving me today was like, "Hey, I don't know anything about Rockcastle County. You know, it's really not that bad, man." I had to give him notes. So, brain fart. Good catch there, Dave Hunter. This is a rich treasure. Snakes usually have none. The treasure probably belonged to someone else who tried to kill the snake but failed. But you see, that's how you explain a lot. A lot of people are like, that's not believable. It's because it fell from another adventurer, you dope. Sometimes treasure could be hidden. Looking carefully around the room, you find a small gem, a pearl in one corner, maybe worth 100 gold pieces itself. Interesting a bit. You catch your breath. You shine the lantern around and see another corridor leading further into the darkness. Looking back the way you came, you see the light of day shining in the cave entrance in the distance. Looks tempting, but you remind yourself that you are a courageous fighter and shouldn't run away just because of a little fighting. Remember, though, that you are hurt. If you continue on, beware. If you see another snake or something else that looks dangerous, you should probably go back. Don't get killed. Live to fight another day. The treasure will wait. You carefully start down the corridor into the unknown, your lantern held high and sword ready. The corridor leads to another small cave. As you approach, you hear a voice and see a light. You pull the shutters closed on your lantern so you can hide better and carefully peek around the corner. To your right, sitting by the cave wall, is a beautiful woman wearing armor like yours. She has no sword but a rod with a metal ball on one end. This is a weapon called a mace. A lit lantern is on the floor next to her. She seems to be meditating or praying. You decide she might not wish to be disturbed, but as you try to quietly tiptoe past, she looks up and says, "Greetings, friend. Looking for the goblin? You might. Oh, you are hurt. May I help?" She watches you carefully, in case you are dangerous, but seems to want to help. You apologize for disturbing her, but you wonder what she knows about the goblin, and most of all, how she could help you. But wait, she might be an enemy. Keeping your sword ready, you move closer. She stands and says, "My name is Alina. I'm a cleric, an adventurer like yourself. I live in the town nearby and came here seeking monsters and treasure. Do you know about clerics? Stop and imagine what your character would say. Back in town, she might be one of your neighbors. You are not sure, but you don't know about clerics." After listening to you, she says, "Well, the goblin went that way," and points towards the corridor leading out of the room. "He came through here so fast, I almost didn't see him. You hit him? Good for you. Goblins are nasty. Since you don't know about clerics, let me explain. Clerics are trained in fighting like you, but we also cast spells. I meditate and the knowledge of spells enter my mind. One of the spells I can cast right now is a curing spell, and it looks like you need it. Spell casting. You've heard of it, but know nothing about it. You are still cautious, but you watch as the cleric says a few words and touches you lightly on the arm. Magically, your wounds are healed." So, we're going back to 8. "Feel better?" she asks. "Would you care to sit and rest a bit? I'd like to tell you a few things that you'll need to know later." You sit down, happy to rest, but keeping your sword handy in case of trouble. She sits down next to her lantern. "If you didn't know about clerics, you probably don't know about magic users. They are adventurers like you and me, but they study only spells and rarely fight. They have different spells than we clerics do, and instead of meditating, they learn their spells from books. There are a few magic users living in town, but not many. If you're attacked by a bad magic user, you might be able to avoid the magic, but it's harder than avoiding poison. Spells can be helpful, but they can be very dangerous too. By the way, that looked like a snake bite that I cured. That can be very bad because most poison is deadly. You were lucky that it didn't cause more damage. Some other creatures also have special attacks like poison. Some can paralyze and some can even turn you to stone just by looking at you, unless you look away in time. And dragons are the worst. They can breathe fire, acid, or other deadly things. You can never avoid all the damage from their breaths, but you can lessen it if you cover up in time. Your character has different saving throws for each of the special attack forms. These will be explained later, of course. The saving throw. So we have our wisdom and charisma score. So, as your fighter talks with the cleric, you get to know each other a little better. She offers to come along to help in the adventure, although this means that the treasure should be split between you. It also means that together you can defeat more dangerous monsters and find more treasure. And two adventurers have a better chance of success than either does alone. You decide that it would be a good idea, and together you set off down the next corridor. Side by side, you quietly walk down the dark passageway. You see another corridor branching off to the right, about 20 feet ahead. Keeping your lantern half shuttered, you can see what you are doing without attracting much attention. You move up to the corridor and peek around the corner. Four beast-like humans in tattered clothes are standing in a group about 10 feet away down the side corridor, but they make no noise at all, quiet as the dead. They look like they are waiting for some poor victim to come along. Before you can speak, the cleric touches your arm and points back the way you came. The two of you back up a few feet so the creatures won't hear you. They're ghouls, she whispers. If one hits you, it could paralyze you. Ghouls are undead monsters, very nasty things, neither dead nor alive, but something horrible in between. We clerics have some power over these creatures of darkness. Follow me and wish for luck. You move forward again, but with the cleric leading the way. Peeking around the corner, you see the ghouls. Luckily, they don't seem to have heard your whispers. The cleric pulls out a necklace out from under her armor, and you see that there is a symbol of one of the town churches on her silver chain. She boldly steps out, holds up the symbol, and says harshly, "Begone, vile things!" When she steps out, the ghouls quickly turn to attack. But now, as she thrusts the symbol out, the ghouls pause, and suddenly, in a rush, they scramble away down the side corridor into the darkness, and all in dead silence. "Don't bother to chase them," she mutters. "As I said, they can be quite dangerous, and we should continue on our way. I was lucky to turn them, and it might not work again." As you continue down the corridor together, she explains, "We call this turning undead. You see, only clerics can do it, and sometimes it doesn't work. Ghouls are only one of the many kinds of undead monsters. There are also skeletons, zombies, and much worse. If you had been alone, you could easily have been ambushed and probably slain. Let's hurry, because the turning only lasts a few minutes. There are too many of them for us to handle." You see a door ahead, to the right. This is unusual in caves, and you approach it slowly and quietly. The corridor continues past it, into the darkness. Together you examine the door. It is made of wood with heavy iron bands across it. The hinges seem to be on the other side. A large keyhole is below the curved metal handle. Handle. "I don't see anything dangerous," says the cleric. "But then, I don't know much about the traps you sometimes find on doors. It's worth a try." She tries to open it, but the door seems to be locked. "You try to force it open?" she asks. You back up a bit, and with a short run, slam into the door. But try as you might, you can't break it open. "What a pity," murmurs Alina. "There's probably some nice treasure in there, but we can't get to it. We need a thief." Seeing the puzzled look on our face, she explains. Seeing the puzzled look on your face, she explains, "You may think that thieves are bad, but many of them aren't. Thieves are adventurers too. Some of them are quite nice folks, really. You do have to keep an eye on your coin purse, but a thief can be very helpful finding traps, opening locks, climbing walls, and doing other things. I'm sure we could do if we had a thief along, and a magic user could help too. I usually go adventuring with those types, plus a couple of big fighters like you to handle the rough stuff. Fortunately, nobody else wanted to come along this time." try the door again, but it won't open. So with a sigh of regret, the two of you continue down the corridor. The corridor curves to the left, and you see a light ahead. You stop and listen and hear voices. One sounds like a man, but the other sounds like a goblin. Get up, you wimpy weakling, growls the man. Who else did you see besides the fighter and a cleric? Please, master, don't hurt, whimpers the goblin. Nobody else, nobody. I hurt the fighter real bad. I came to tell you right away. The goblin's lies don't seem to fool the human. Get up, I say, or I'll turn you into a toad. You probably ran away without even trying. Nobody else. You're sure? Nobody else, master, I swear. Humph. They could still mean trouble. Perhaps we can trick them and kill them without a fight. Elena taps your arm once again, and you back up to discuss the situation. I recognize that man's voice, she says. It's Bargle, one of those bad magic users. He's probably cast a spell on the goblin to force it to serve him. If we go back, we should be safe. Oh, I almost forgot. The ghouls are back there. If Bargle only has one goblin, we should risk this battle rather than face all those undead. Besides, he's not ready for us yet. Listening carefully, you hear the magic user and the goblin planning to trick you. And Alina, the two of you are like, magic is dangerous. And Alina will try to fight his spell with hers. Your job is to fight the goblin. As you return, you hear a spell being cast up ahead. You peek around the corner and see a tall bearded human in a black robe standing in the room. A goblin is crouched by one wall, watching. The robed magic user is moving his hands and saying words you don't understand, and suddenly he disappears. The goblin cackles with glee and says, "Ah, master, it worked. Nobody can see you now, and what a surprise those nasty people will have. And I'm next. Make me invisible too, master," the cleric whispers, "now, before they can do any more." And you charge into the room together. The goblin jumps up and meets your charge with a swing of its sword. It misses. The goblin has 2 hit points, and you still need to roll a 12 or better to hit. Roll the die and keep track of the battle the same way you did with a snake. So, 2 hit points. Hope everybody's enjoying this, by the way. I understand just watching me and listening to me is probably not the most mentally stimulating thing in the world. So, I need to roll a 12 or better to hit. 17. That is a hit. Bringing him down to 1. As you battle the goblin, Alina looks wildly around for the invisible magic user, waving her mace to and fro in the air. It seems to hit something, and you hear a deep grunt. She keeps waving her mace, but without further success. You don't see what her spell does, so you concentrate on fighting. The goblin hits your fighter for 2 points of damage. You only do 1 point of damage when you hit, compared to the goblin's 2, but the goblin only has 2 hit points, so it's a fair fight. Roll again to see if you hit the goblin. If you miss, the goblin swings and misses again. So, he hits me. Down to 2. Okay. Now. Miss. So he swings and he misses again. And I hit him that time, killing him. Oh, no, I skipped ahead. Do we? Okay. So, never mind. GM Fiat. He still only has 1. Okay. Alina can't find Bargle and is starting to look worried. Suddenly, the sound of a spell comes from a far corner of the room. The cleric turns and runs in that direction, waving her mace and shouting. The black-robed magic user appears in the same corner as the spell noise, with a glowing arrow floating in the air beside him. He points it at Alina. The arrow shoots out and hits her. She wails and falls with a sigh, collapsing in the middle of the room. The glowing arrow disappears. If your fighter hasn't slain the goblin yet, roll again. But while you are swinging, the goblin hits you again, causing 2 more points of damage. Remember to keep track of hit points for both the goblin and your fighter. Okay, I hit him that time. But he also hits me for 2 points of damage, so he's dead. Okay, if you're still fighting, I'm not still fighting. So the second time you hit the creature, that his hit points reach 0 and he shrieks and falls dead on the floor. You have overcome one enemy, but the magic user remains. When the goblin falls, the magic user starts looking worried. Watching you carefully, he starts saying magic words and waving his hands. He's casting a spell at you. You run at him, hoping for a chance to swing before he can complete the spell, but it's too late. A magical force touches your mind. Roll the dice once again. You must make a saving throw against the spell. Roll a 16 or less, the magic takes effect. If you roll a 17 or higher, your fighter avoids the spell. Let's find out. Does Renault make this save? He does not. Read the next section, ending 1. You miss the saving throw. As you get near the magic user, a funny feeling comes over you. Why he doesn't look so bad. In fact, Bargle seems to be a pretty nice guy. Think you used to be friends, but you're not sure just where or when. Feeling better, he asks. You were overcome with rage for a moment. You okay now? Sure, you replied, somewhat confused. You seem to be okay, Bargle, old pal, and I only took a little damage from that goblin. Say, I saw some ghouls back there. We should get moving. Indeed, replies Bargle. Well, let's pack up the goodies and move on. Together you collect the treasure, a small bag from the goblin, and a larger one from the cleric. Bargle picks up the black velvet bag, explaining that he dropped it while he was fighting the goblin. As you get ready to leave, you blurt out, shouldn't we take the cleric's body back? She helped me out earlier. That would be nice, Bargle replies, but we're carrying all we can. We all take our risks here in the dungeon. Something seems wrong about that. You argue with Bargle a bit, but he convinces you that nothing could be done for her, and bringing her along could slow you down, maybe enough that the ghouls would catch up. So you head off down the corridor as if the best of friends. The corridor leads to another room, which is empty. You search it together, nothing can be found, but looking down the next passage, you see a light. Bargle, you exclaim, look here. Ah, I see, he says. There must be a way out. We're in good shape now. Lead on, fierce fighter. I shall watch for the ghouls. You head down the corridor towards the light. Sure enough, it's a side passage leading out of the hill into the sunlight. As your stomach grumbles, you remember that it's afternoon. You missed lunch and all that excitement. Shall we head back, you ask, as you squint out into the daylight, much brighter than your lantern? Surely, he replies. As you head outside, you start to talk about how hungry you are. Bargle's reply isn't in a language you can understand. You stop and turn and see him softly chanting his spell, waving his hands at you. Or you can ask what's going on. You begin to feel very sleepy. Everything goes black. Something lands on your face, and you start to wake up. Opening your eyes, you see a leaf, apparently fallen from the tree above you. You're lying by a cave, and it's late afternoon, but you can make it back in a hurry. But suddenly you remember what happened. Bargle! The fight with the goblin, Alina falling, the strange bad but nice feeling about the magic user, horrors. You are enchanted, and where is the treasure? You get up quickly, brushing the leaves off your face and equipment. Perhaps Bargle was afraid to kill you and just stole all that he could find, or more likely, Bargle was scared away by something before he could slit your throat. Your dagger is missing and some food, but your sword is in its sheath and your pack is still there. One sack remains, and from the pain in your back, you must have been sleeping on it. It contains some of the coins you found by the snake in the tiny gem. The rest is missing. You remember what happened to poor Lena. You should probably take her back to town. They might be able to help, and even if it's too late, she should get a proper burial. As you prepare to return to the caves, you find that your lamp has gone out, the oil all burned away. There's still one oil flask in your pack. So you refill the lantern and light it with your tinderbox and head back into the darkness. You pass through one empty room and then find the bodies of the cleric and the goblin in the next. But you see the dark, white shapes in the darkness beyond. It's the ghouls. Quickly, you put the cleric's body over your shoulder and run for your life. The ghouls following, snapping at your heels. You can't move as fast as usual with the weight of the cleric on your shoulder, but you win the desperate race and get outside once again. You pause for a moment, out of breath. Looking back, you see the ghouls in the cave, but they don't seem to be coming out. Then you remember Alina's words, creatures of darkness. Maybe they hate the sunlight and only come outside at night. You'd better hurry. Get back to town before dark. It's hard to run with the cleric across your shoulder, but you finally get back just as the sun goes down. Once there, you take her body to her church. It's too late to help her, but they can give her a proper burial. They thank you for your kindness and offer a small bottle as a reward. What is it, you ask? It's a magical potion, of course, he exclaims. It's a potion of healing. If you are hurt, you can drink this and be cured somewhat like our magical curing spells. It's a nice magical treasure. Save it for an adventure in your future in case a cleric you are traveling with runs out of spells. It's the least we can do. The clerics thank you again for your help and you thank them for theirs. You leave the church and head for your home on the other side of town, thinking about your adventure and all you have learned. Now pretend that you made the saving throw and read the next section to see what might have happened. If you already read the next section, skip to the winning section afterwards. So, alrighty, let's see what we would have gotten. Bargle's magic doesn't seem to work. He pauses surprised as you swing. Roll the die. If you roll 8 or higher, you hit. Roll a 7 or less means that you missed. You can get close to them. Magic users are often easy to hit. They're not very dangerous in a close fight. So, of course we hit. If you hit, the magic user gives a cry and falls dead. You have won. If you miss, Bargle screams and runs down the corridor. Okay, you can skip this part. You kneel by the cleric and gently turn her over. Alas, Bargle's magical spell has taken her life. Mourning for the loss of your newfound friend, you decide to take her back to town for a proper burial. You tidy her up while keeping an eye out for monsters and listening carefully in case Bargle comes back, but nothing happens. The goblin had very little treasure, just a few copper pieces in a small bag. Searching the room, you find another bag, a finer one of black velvet. It must be Bargle's, dropped in the heat of the battle. Opening it, you find several valuable gems and a small bottle. You put the treasure away, planning to examine the bottle later. Nothing else of value is in the room. You pick up the poor cleric and carry her on one shoulder. Should you continue down the dark corridor or head back to the way you came? You suddenly see shadowy shapes approaching from the way you came. The ghouls must have returned. Now there is no choice. You must hope that the magic user ran away and that a way out lies in that direction. Fighting the ghouls would mean your death. You stagger under the weight, but manage to run down the corridor, holding your lantern shakily with one finger. You enter a room, but it looks empty. No time to search. You continue onward. As you head into the next corridor, you see light ahead. As you approach, you see that it's coming from a side passage. Peering into it, you find the corridor leads outside, into the midday sun. Carefully, in case Bargle is waiting to ambush you, you walk outside, and all is clear and calm. You rest a bit, pick up the cleric, and head back to town. Once there, you take her body to her church. It's too late to help her, but they can give her a proper burial. They thank you for your kindness and offer a favor in return. You remember the strange small bottle in Bargle's bag and get it out, asking whether they can tell you what it is. One of the clerics opens the bottle and sniffs at it. Why, it seems to be a magical potion, he exclaims. Let me see. Now I'm sure I've smelled that before. Ah, I remember, it's a potion of growth. If you drink it, you will become a giant for a short time, for 1 or 2 hours, and can do double normal damage when you hit a monster. Congratulations, it's a nice magical treasure. It won't spoil. Save it for an adventure in your future. The clerics thank you again for your help, and you thank them for theirs. You leave the church and head for your home on the other side of town, thinking about your adventure and all you have learned. You have just played a D&D game. This adventure was designed to show you some of the basic parts of the game. You played a fighter who tried to survive in the dungeon while finding monsters and treasure. You succeeded, so your character wins, quote unquote. Think a moment. Why do we play games? To have fun. Each player wins by having fun. So if you had a good time, you win. You can have fun even if your character gets killed. If that happens, don't worry. You can always make up another one. Bargle. I know, right? That dastardly fiend. And of course, I got charmed and put to sleep. Sup, nerds? What's up, Jason? Winning a role playing game is like winning in real life. It's just succeeding in what you do, what you want to do, living through it. The fun comes from doing it, not ending it. This is why we say that in this game, everybody wins and nobody loses. You know, probably one of my favorite game on. That's right. So, of course, like I said, this is actual print. This is the actual 1983 Mincer Basic. Uh, I've been over this before, but one of my favorite memories actually comes from the first time I ran Basic Fantasy. Right, so we were actually running Morgan's Fort, and um, I'm going to avoid major spoilers, but it's okay because they died right at the beginning of the dungeon. But there is a wolf lair in the beginning part of the dungeon, and there is a percentile chance that they will be in the lair. And the party went in there, and the thief was going to sneaky sneak. Well, funny thing about percentile die, when I rolled, see, he would have snuck that time, but that's not what he got. That was actually a really good percentile roll, but that's not what he had that time. It definitely didn't succeed. And I ordered a hard copy of Morgan's Fort. Yeah, man. Um, that's my first edition one. But so wolves being what they are, and they see the halfling thief sneaking in to their home. Why, they didn't take too kindly to that. The poor thief was eviscerated, and as they were retreating, the wolves were definitely faster because, while the other two guys, well, one was a cleric, and of course he was decked out in all the clericy things, chainmail and whatnot, so he's too heavy to outrun these things. And I think the other one was a fighter, and he decided to take aim with his bow, and it wasn't working. It just wasn't. Like they were getting swarmed. They were trying to back up as much as they could, not taking their eyes off. They honestly should have. Well, honestly, if they would have sprinted, they still wouldn't have outrun these things. They would have been killed immediately. So it just was what it was, and so first room, first dungeon, first session, literally within 5 minutes. TPK. Roll new characters. That's the cool part about these games. Like the world goes on. When they made their new characters and they went down into the old island fortress, they saw the dead bodies. Well, the dice rolls being what they are, it just so happened, okay, let's roll Wandering Monsters. Oh shucks. This time they wouldn't have had it, but that time they did, and it was Giant Cacilia. And rolling my die to see where these things were. Oh shucks, they're over the bodies of these poor adventurers. They've smelt the blood. They want to kill them. They want to eat the corpses. They were going to loot their old characters, take what they had. It didn't work. But the cool part about it is that they really started thinking in a lot very creative ways. Um, when they went outside, nom nom corpses. When they went outside, they asked if there were um, if there were any trees nearby. And of course, I was like, yeah, Morgansport lies near a bunch of tree lines, so pine trees and stuff like that, and some oaks and firs and all that. That's my wife in the chat, by the way. Everybody say hi, Sarah. So that is Mrs. Rex. Anyway, um, they decided they were going to make some of these traps because the first room in Morgan in the Old Island Fortress is an octagonal room, and you enter from the north. The wolves were towards the west. There's some rooms to the east, and there's a hall to the east and a hall to the south. And they decided we really don't want to get jumped because this is a four-way intersection. So they basically made these kind of punji spike trap things, um, these kind of barriers, and they would put them together. They would spend the time putting them together outside the fortress, and then carry them down and plop them at the beginnings of the halls that they were not going to go down, so that when they went down one hall, they wouldn't get jumped from behind. And it was, it was creative. So I had to come up with like, okay, how does this work mechanically? So and whenever I'd roll like I would roll another die in addition to the wandering monster die, and so it was like, okay, is there anything down here? So it might not have been necessarily um, it might not necessarily have been the most rules as written way to run it, but it was. I mean, there's not rules for it. Like that's kind of one of those things. Is like, okay, I've got to come up with something on the fly, and you just kind of have to trust that your process is going to work. Point being, it made for an enthralling exploration, and it got them to think outside of hack and slash. They come up with some pretty good ideas, some pretty awesome ideas. I miss those days. I really do. Like it was definitely, oh man, like it's just so many fun memories. It I mean, I'm telling you, man, like this right here, you cannot go wrong. Honest, like I said, it's meant for beginning player characters, right? So I mean, that's when the game is the most fun, is the earliest levels. That's why I've said, I'm of course going to keep a lookout for like the expert set for the Mincer expert set, but whether I do or not, I mean it doesn't matter because the basic set, levels 1 through 3. Plus I have Mold Bay Cook down there. I actually have it in a binder, so I want to actually get my binders out here. All right. Oh. Aha, actually, there's another book I never did talk about when I was talking about OSR games. Beneath the Sunken Catacombs. Don't know if any of y'all have heard of it, but it is a game that is created by um, uh, Paul Bantock, and it is very white box heavy. It's inspired by Charlie Mason's white box fantasy medieval adventure game, and it has rules for zero level, starting off at zero level. It has some examples of random monster encounter ideas and stuff like that. It's actually a pretty good little book, and it's very cheap. It's basically the same price as that. Plus, like you have things like different flavors of classes. So, like, I'll get back to my binders and stuff here in a second, but I want to talk about this game because this game, like, you probably never heard of it. I found it, and it's actually a pretty nice little find, gotta say. Pretty nifty little find. I could definitely see myself running a campaign for this. So, anyways, so let's just take the elf for example. I started with AD&D and then got into BX, so I never needed Mincer back me, right? Yeah, I mean, hey, that's all good. Mincer's format is my favorite uh, presentation and format of the rules. So that's just me. That's my personal opinion. That's my personal thing. I love Mulvey and I love Cook. It's that I just really like Mincer's formatting and presentation. So let's talk about the elf variants, right? So you have like the regular elf, right? But you have other elves over at the side. So let's just take, okay. So elves can use weapons of any type, wear leather armor. They also have agility with a score of 15 plus. In their dexterity, they increase their movement speed by 5 feet per round. They have a +2 saving throw bonus to rolls made against paralysis and blasts. They have spell casting. They can detect secret doors, of course, and they have night vision. I started on Holmes basic. Hey, man. Uh, in my opinion, BX was the best basic. You see, Retro DM Ray, he is a huge, huge fanboy for Holmes basic. BX and Beckme are both great intros into the hobby. Absolutely. So the elf variants. So instead of like playing the classic elf that you would normally see in the white box, you could have Elf Ranger, which is they exchange their sorcery spells for priest spells. So they can, which that's cleric. You can have, but they cannot detect secret doors, but they may instead perform the following tasks using their secret door rolls, like tracking creatures, calm wild beasts, and forage for food in the wild. So like a ranger. You have the Elven Priest, which exchanges their sorcery spells for priest spells, so like clerics, which they receive by praying. They also benefit from the priest's divine wisdom ability, so that's that. You got the Blade Dancer, which cannot cast spells until 3rd level, and is treated as 2 levels lower for the purpose of spell casting. When they are armed with a one-handed weapon in each hand, they may attack twice in each round, once with each weapon. And you have an Elven Knight, which can't cast spells until 3rd level, treated as 2 levels lower. They may wear chainmail armor and use shields and deal +1 damage with all weapons. So you also have thief variants. So you could be a thug. You could be a burglar. You could be a sharpshooter. You could be a woodland scout. It's a pretty nice little flavor. It's basically somebody's. I've often knocked a lot of people's iteration of BX being repackaged online, but this, you don't see White Box being repackaged, but this is actually different. I love seeing young bucks like Kentucky Rex Fine TSR era real D&D. Dude, I love it so much. I actually have. I need to find it. It's buried in my closet somewhere. I need to find it. I have a box set of Undermountain Part 2 for 2nd edition. I found it once upon a time at a flea market. I'm going to try to find 2nd edition DMG Player Handbook and Monster Manual because I would love to play. I would absolutely love to play 2nd edition. But I think there's nothing that's going to supplant the basic expert with me. You know what I mean? I think BX is going to be the addition for me. Although I do like Castles and Crusades a lot. I think in terms of modern games, Castles and Crusades is the way to go. Like I said, even taking out the politics from WotC, like I already left WotC because their quality and their products was quite literally crap. I had books literally fall apart in my hands. And there's no excuse for paying $150 for 3 core rule books that you cannot be bothered to make sure that you can't even stitch them together, stitch the pages together. There ain't no calling it. Instead of friggin' gluing them together and not using enough glue, and they all just flop out anyway. I have Undermountain 1, but I haven't found 2 at a reasonable price yet. I think I found mine. I can't remember how much I paid for it. It was at like I said, it was at a flea market. I don't think they knew what they had. I think I paid like $20 for it. I'll get it dug out, and I'll show you next time. Because I'm not joking. I do have Undermountain Part 2. Ruins Undermountain. So, this is, of course, my basic and expert rolls. I may put it in the folder. So, this is Moldvay. This is Moldvay and Cook. So, I do have my own little handmade omnibus for that. But I do have also, like I said, I've also got the Roll Cyclopedia down there, of course. Like I have enough rolls to where I never had to run again. And this book, I mean, I will always have a soft spot. That being said, when she started getting kind of stained and dog-eared, I was like, how many more years does she really have? And she's held up very good for a cheap book. I've not had a single page fall out. So it's been very good to me. But just in case, at the time, I did make my own omnibus for Basic Fantasy. I used a stock image online. It's totally free for a dwarf. I thought it was cool. I put the Kentucky Rex Basic Fantasy role-playing game omnibus across it. And right at the beginning, I put a picture of Edgar Gygax with a couple quotes. I actually put a personalized letter for my kids in it, and I'll actually got some of the Crusades try to make 30 more like D&D, just like Shadowrun tries to make 5e more like D&D. I'm a fan of the trolls, good people. Yeah, I know. I mean, hey, they give veterans discounts. You know what I mean? And like, I'm not a veteran, but I tell all my veteran buddies, hey, if you want to get into this hobby, check out Troll Lord, because they'll cut you. All you have to do is email them, and they'll hit you up. So this is the letter that I put in for my kids. I'm going to avoid saying certain things because it does reveal my full name, and some of y'all have probably already found me on Facebook by now, so I'm not too terrified of that happening. That being said, I'm just going to avoid it for a bit. If you ever find me on Facebook or on Twitter, I mean, I'm not hard to find, really, but you'll probably figure out who I am. So, my letter starts, my guess is that if you're reading this, you're either one of my children or another relative of mine. Let me welcome you to this body of work. I wrote very little of it. I simply compiled it from various sources to suit my personal tastes. I enjoyed this hobby very much and took my job as a game master / referee serious, but not too serious. This hobby is just that, a hobby. It was not my entire life. I never expected to gain fame, recognition, or money from it. I played because I enjoyed it. I chose the 3rd edition of the Basic Fantasy role-playing game by Chris Gonnerman for this omnibus because it introduced me to a simpler and more, quote, pure, end quote, form of gaming in a fantasy setting. I disliked the editions released after 1997 with the acquisition of Dungeons and Dragons by Wizards of the Coast. I absolutely despise the culture and philosophy of the degenerates that run those editions afterwards. And while BFRPG is not a 100% quote faithful end quote adaptation of the BX editions, it's close enough to, and contains some mechanics, rules, and quality of life choices that makes the game smooth to play and teach new players. I also became accustomed to creating and developing settings, dungeons, worlds, adventures, monsters, etc. with the BFRPG system. And its price point of absolutely free made it very accessible. To conclude, I've attempted to compile a body of work that would help me with gaming and come up with ideas to design a game around. The basic fantasy core rules are included, along with a quick primer for old school gaming by the excellent Matt Finch. I've included supplemental materials from the basic fantasy forums. I also compiled various different resources like random tables, and of course, my own material is included in the back. Take care. God bless. See you on the other side. So, yeah, I wrote that to my kids. And of course, I have the entire core rules at the beginning. So it's the entire third edition. And then I have the quick primer for old school gaming by Matt Finch listed afterwards. That's available to read online for free. So I threw it in there. And then I have some supplements. I have Powder and Shot, which is a firearms supplement. I'm too dumb to hide my name. I know you're cool, my man. I'm not evil enough to dox people or to do any like if I know your real name, I'm not evil enough to do with it anyway. Like I could literally hate your like. There's people that I know their real names in real life, and I hate their guts, and I would never do anything to them. I found a dungeon generator on the forums, and I thought it was pretty nifty. So it was pretty decent. It was by Roberto Biscigli. I'm sorry if he's watching and I've ruined his name, but it was actually a pretty nifty little dungeon generator. There's Hex Crawl Adventures, and it gives XP for like exploring hexes and stuff. And that is by Luke Kennedy. And he re-released it under. This is probably the only thing in here that's re-released under Creative Commons. I think everything else was under OGL. And you have a stronghold and domain events and stuff like that. And it also has its own dungeon generator, and there's a Dominion log and all that stuff in it. Pretty nifty. You have Adventuring, which is by Sean Spencer and contributors. Basically, kind of adds in a few optional things and stuff to the core rules. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of helps a little bit. Backgrounds and specialties. And I liked this one a lot, so I included it. And it's by James Roberts and Shane Power. So like sample backgrounds: aristocrat, barbarian, farmer, outdoorsman, scholar, seafarer, soldier, tradesman, cleric, specialist, and like I like this idea. I like having the archetype being a specialist. Give me 1 second. I'm going to excuse myself for just a moment. I'll be right back. Okay. I have returned. Put that on the bed there. He's gone. It's our stream now. Mwahaha. I know, right? Thank you guys for sticking around, by the way. I do appreciate the views. But I like, which I think everybody does, having like the archetypes of the character classes having particular specialties. Like, especially if you run like a game for long enough. I think that's like the biggest draw to like BX and white box style play because they're simple enough to where you can make these specialty classes and it wouldn't wreck a single thing. It wouldn't jack anything up. You could either run it straight out of the box or you can, like, after you run it enough times, kind of add your own flavor to things. Yeah, I think that's the coolest part about it. I really do. So, like, of course, it like goes into okay, cleric specialists. You have crusader, dwarven cleric, elven cleric, halfling cleric, healer, uh, heavily armored, prophet, redeemer, shaman, fighter specialists. You have archer, brawler, dual wielder, dwarven warrior, elven warrior, halfling warrior, heavily armored, holy warrior, horseman, lightly armored, weapon master. Magic users, you have the artificer, elven mage, war wizard, witch/warlock. Thief specialist, you have boxman, you have deadeye, dual wielding, dwarven thief, elven thief, halfling thief, lightly armored scout, spy, thug. Creating new specialties and having multiple specialties. Then there is a sort of, this one's by Thorn Schmidt, who is who's pretty active on the forums, and he's also pretty active on the BFRPG Discord channel. It's this one called Playing God. So you basically come up with like you kind of come up with your own religions to your worlds. So like clerics are essential to a campaign. Their strength is derived from their faith. Spells are assumed to be divine in origin. But as a GM, how should this be handled? The short answer is however you like. The religion in your world can be as simple or complicated as you like. The supplement is intended to help you, the GM, decide how to go about it. It is a guide to making your own decisions, not a book full of pre-made deities. That being said, you will find a few sample deities here and there for illustrative purposes. Their suitability for a campaign is not guaranteed. Also, just to be clear, the use of the word God is not meant to indicate a required gender. Goddesses are just as powerful and amazing as gods, so I will use them indeterminately and somewhat randomly. Please don't read anything else into it. So let's get started. So, like, he talks about monotheism, polytheism, forces of nature, forces of man, elementalism, using existing mythology, using add-ons. You can, and then just straight up names like terms for particular worshippers, and of course atheists at the very end. And then what have I got back here? I've got a couple of I got a couple of random tables like so you didn't make it out of the dungeon. So let's roll a D100 and see what was the deal. So 68. So you didn't make it out of the dungeon. The barbed quills stung and dug deeper into your flesh. You try to get them all out, but every so often, on a roll of 8, one wriggles and stings. So, kind of some cities and settlements. So, you roll a D100. Let's come up with a name for a place. Okay, 23. So, we have Barton, 84. Spartan Wick. And resources, imports or exports. Eight, brick and tile. So, I mean, there you go. Quick little settlement on thing. There's some sandbox generator examples back here that I use just for mostly inspiration, because they're just some samples taken from from the sandbox generator. But that's my BFRPG omnibus. That is pretty much my big old OSR magnum opus when you get down to it. I need to put more supplements in it. And my cover is falling out. So there's that. I have. Alrighty, so talk a little bit longer and then I'll get off, because you guys have been listening to me ramble on like an idiot for like 2 hours almost. Like I said, I'm going to try to digitize a lot of my stuff. The current one that I'm currently digitizing is that. That's a pretty nice omnibus you can hand down to your kids. Absolutely. That at the end of the day, like I always share my stuff with my kids. Like I always share my hobbies and interests with my kids, even if they're not interested in it. You know, like they give it a try, and then if they're interested in it, great. One is like pretty young, so it's just like she doesn't like get it yet. The older one, she's more likely to get it. She likes creating characters and come up with like ideas in her head to like what this character is like, you know, what she looks like, how she acts, and stuff like that. She loves that part. Not a big fan of the dying part whenever a bad roll goes wrong, but you know, explain to her, you know, that's just nature of the game, you know. Um, I kind of partly blame a lot of the outlook of kids today on my generation, because I mean, millennials as a whole have been absolutely too soft. Um, I I grew up in a very blue collar family that didn't have a whole lot. So you didn't beat around the bush, you didn't lie, you didn't do anything like that. Like you got to the point very quick, because who's got time for it? I say unironically, as I look at the time, it's been like an hour and 45 minutes. And it's been mostly me rambling. But you know, it come from a very no nonsense family. You know, my dad might have beat my hind end like a rug, but you know, made me a very well adjusted young man. Um, you know, now I'm in my mid 30s. You know, I'm the dad myself with two kids, so um, the discipline was always a thing, and never felt like I was ever abused. You know, I understand that a lot of people feel like they're abused, you know, and I'm not speaking for them. Getting way too into that. But I respected my dad, and I love my dad even. Uh, and he provided a lot for us and worked very hard. And so I had that example whenever I became a dad of providing for my family. Whenever I became a father for the first time, at the time I was 25 and I was still working at the factory. I wasn't a tooling mechanic yet. I worked on the blend lines. And during that time, we were working 6 days a week, 16 hours a day. And, you know, you felt like you got ran over by a truck that first day off, man. My kid and I started recording and posting an AD&D campaign together. It's been fun, dude. I shoot, yeah. I would love. You see, my daughter, my older daughter, she's got her own little YouTube channel, and she like posts mostly her drawings and stuff on it. You know, because she loves drawing and stuff like that. So, you know, she's definitely more artistic. Now I do music mostly. That's where most of my creative output is. But um, I love this hobby, and it's another outlet because I can't draw worth a crap, but I can do a map because I used to do blueprints. I used to do blueprints at the factory when I was a tool mechanic. I had to do schematics and stuff like that all the time. So, and you had to make that because when the customers are the big three in Detroit, they don't have a lot of tolerance on some things. Like we're talking about less than 1% of tolerance on some of their parts. So like you had to make sure that when you were making a checking fixture, you had it right. Like it had to be right. And a pinhole could not be off by, we're talking about itty bitty little millimeters out of the green line that we would paint around the pinhole locator. So it was it's uh, just never had. Now, something cool too, though, is that I talked about this with Retro DM, right? Because he's like, man, it seems like you read a lot of stuff. Like you read a lot of stuff like I wouldn't have ever thought that you read. Stuff that like you're a very well read fellow. And what it was, I learned to read because of The Legend of Zelda, because that was the video game that me and my dad played all the time. And dad would, of course, help me whenever I got stuck, being a young kid. And then whenever I would figure out the solutions to puzzles, I didn't really need his help much anymore. But he taught me to read with that game. And, I remember it very fondly because I think it was the Link to the Past. And it was the first time I ever encountered the word augment. And that's quite a word for a young kid to pick up. And um, whenever I was a young teenager, I had the highest reading score in the state of Kentucky. Period. And I won a trip to the NASA space camp for 2 days because of it, with a bunch of other kids that scored the highest in their fields. So it was a really cool experience, and it was I attribute that to me and my dad having this shared interest. Because Dad liked the Legend of Zelda, I liked the Legend of Zelda. Dad was never really into D&D. I don't think he ever did play, but he liked castles and knights and stuff like that. More fantasy stuff. Even though he doesn't really like Lord of the Rings, it's weird. But Dad was never a reader either, much. So he was more like a movie guy or that kind of stuff. So he was more into like Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that, which that's cool too. I mean, hey, Gygax was the same. He wasn't really much into Lord of the Rings, but he was definitely into Conan the Barbarian. Um, so I attribute a lot of that to my dad. A lot of fond memories of that stuff. And my dad's still around. My dad's still kicking. He works on the railroad, so he travels a lot. And so he was actually, whenever I got laid off last year because of the strikes, because the company I worked for was not union, whereas our customers were. So when our customers went on strike, well, we had this big layoff. Well, the company contacted me and said, "Hey, you're too expensive for us to bring back. 11 year seniority. You see where that got me? Nowhere." And because at the time I was making 23.60 an hour, and because of that, the cool part is though, because of that, I qualified for displaced workers benefits. And my dad told me you should think about getting your CDL, and because Dad had his, because my dad is a master electrician, and been there, done that. Yeah, my dad is a master electrician. He is he has a Class B CDL. So he's like, you should definitely think about getting a CDL. He goes, because that is probably, he said, that's probably going to be the one trade that requires the least amount of time to get trained for. And he goes, and you can there's the potential for a lot of money in it. He goes, and plus, if you ever decide you want to get on the railroad, I mean, you can have a job pretty easily, especially with your mechanical experience getting on the railroad. Well, I'm not on the railroad. I actually drive for Pepsi, so um, but I actually started driving for Coke before I started driving for Pepsi. But um, Coke was a good company. They just didn't know how to route things. Like I was out all day for like 19 hours sometimes. Um, but anyway, uh, whenever I went signed up on unemployment, KCEOC, which is a government uh, training facility kind of place, employment opportunity center. I asked them if they had any training programs open specifically for CDL training. They said, yeah, actually, we got a school that's going to be starting session soon. It's a 2 week class. Go in there, get your training done, test, and there you go. We pay for the whole shebang. And CDL school is $5,000, by the way. So of course I was tickled to death about that. And I thought 2 weeks, doggone, what in the world? And they crammed as much as they could in that 2 weeks. The first week was mostly about pre-trip inspection because they was like 90% of people that failed the CDL test is because they failed the pre-trip inspection portion. So pre-trip, and so like I, is a, and it's important though because you do pre and post trip your truck of at the beginning and end of every day. So the first week was mostly about um, pre-trip, but we did work on backing techniques. So we did, of course, the first day is straight line backing, just to get you used to your mirrors. You used to your mirrors that you just pull forward and then come back in backwards. Use your mirrors. Just make sure you don't hit the cones. Second day was offset. I sucked so bad at offset. Um, where you basically move from one lane to the next, backing up. I sucked so bad at it. I honestly didn't think I was ever going to get the hang of it because I was like, man, I just cannot get that timing right on when to turn the wheel. And then of course, a lot of it was because I was cutting my wheel too much. Like I was just, and I was like, man, I finally figured out that I didn't need to do that. And then they had us do parallel parking, which I thought I would suck on it worse than what I did. I thought I would suck at parallel, but I actually didn't. I did pretty good at parallel. Um, Even on blindside parallel. And then the second week we started driving. The first day they took us down what they call the Little Loop in London, where they start us from the school. We drive a couple of streets up to Main Street, then back around, past the lights, back to the school, and we just do that a couple times. And it's basically just to get you used to double clutching. They have automatic trucks there now, but at the time they didn't have an automatic truck at all, so it was all 10 speed, which I highly recommend not taking the automatic restriction. Definitely testing a 10 speed because we had one boy at Pepsi. I had to come in on overtime to teach him how to drive a manual transmission because he started with Schneider, and Schneider, I guess, only has automatics now, which most mega carriers do. And there were a bunch of our trucks he could not drive at all. Like he was a relief guy, and we couldn't use him. Like he would have to be a ride along, and we needed more people who could drive, but he couldn't drive the trucks that would be available because he had an automatic restriction. So I helped him get that lifted. Uh, he burned out a few clutches before then, but um, so the second day we did more of a drive around London, like the whole town, and then came back to school, and then we practiced our backing techniques again. Then the third day we did we drove to Mount Vernon and then back. Um, And then we practiced our backing again because you practice your backing every day. And of course, you did your pre trip every day. The fourth day on that second week, we went to Middlesboro. Although we didn't really go all the way into Middlesboro, we would we'd go into we would go outside of Pineville, and before you hit Middlesboro, there's this truck stop. There's this truck stop called Casey's, just outside of Middlesboro, right when Middlesboro starts, and um, we you would pull off there. The way they did it is because each group had like three or four guys. Like one guy would take part of the trip, the other guy would take another part of the trip, and the other guy would take another part of the trip. So one guy drove us from London to just outside of Barville. We do an emergency stop, put the flashers on, get used to that. He'd ask us questions about the cones and stuff, and then I drove us from just outside of Barville all the way to Casey's, and then back to basically where I started, just on the opposite side of the road. And then the third guy took us from there back to London. That dude, man, he could not find seventh gear to save his life. Um, I don't know what it was. I think it was just because he tried to force it all the time. Some guys they really don't realize how sneaky that soft wall is. So he would try to jam it, and at one point he made the truck jump, and we were in a sleeper cabin truck. So he also couldn't figure out how to use the brakes, so he slammed the brakes, and when he did, I went flying into the back of his seat, and the trainer was like, "What the f is wrong with you, man?" And I was like, "Doggone." Outside of Bargle, outside of outside of Bargle. So for those of you, I should explain this. So for those of you that not privy to the naming conventions right here, there is a town. It is. See, I'm from Grays. We say Grays, but it's actually Gray, Gray. So you got Corbin, Grays. I live in Corbin now, and keep going south. There's Barville. It's spelled Barberville. So Barbourville, but we say Barville. So like we don't. Nobody around here pronounces it as Barberville. That's a lot of Bargle rage among certain age group. So. Uh, we and then the next town over is actually Flatlick. You got Girdler and Flatlick. Now Girdler is not on that side. Girdler, yeah. Anyway, so you got Flatlick, and then you go. There's this place called 4 Mile, and I had no clue it was its own little town. Apparently, it is. It's got its own post office. I've lived here all my life and had no clue that 4 Mile was even a thing. Poor Lena. I know, right? Can't save her no matter what you do, man. Even if you make that save. Bargle just straight up kills her with that magic missile. And then there's Pineville, just out on the other side of Bargle. And you got Middlesboro. And Middlesboro is a little bit famous. See, Corbin is famous because we're the hometown of KFC and the Cumberland Falls. And then Middlesboro is mostly famous because it's a town that's kind of in a basin, in a prehistoric crater on top of the mountains. And it'll take you straight towards the intersection of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. And it used to be that you couldn't really take that. You had to go up the mountain. You don't have to go up the mountain anymore. They got a tunnel now. It goes through the mountain. So, but over in that area is where you'll find the Cumberland Gap. So, uh, Millsboro is called like the Las Vegas of Appalachia, but you uh, don't really, you kind of see it because it's like it is a bustling little city for what it is. It's just it's not Las Vegas. A lot of poor business decisions from the 1800s that led to the development of that city. But the city thrived while everybody else is, while these business tycoons didn't quite get off the ground. Well, fellers, it's getting pretty late, and I've kept you oh so long, and you've been oh so patient. Of course, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jason. You guys definitely have pulled your weight. Once all the weird Indian sex bots finally left the chat, and by the way, if you ever decide to stream and you have a bunch of them saying hello, can you repeat this for me? Don't ever do it because they're trying to get your voice first sample so that they can use AI to scam you. So take care, guys. God bless. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you for watching tonight.